Welcome back to this continuing series on the fruit of the Spirit, where we're learning about a toolkit of gifts we can use in our everyday life. You're invited to watch this and reflect on the questions posed at the end by yourself or with a small group. Joy. Joy is a feeling, and our whole body experiences this emotion as a sensation. It's not just up in our head. One does not think joy. One feels joy right here in the gut. Theologian and scholar Michael Himes talks about the difference between joy and happiness. We experience happiness when we get a good night's sleep or find our favorite dessert at the end of a meal. Unhappiness is something we experience when we're sick or have a cold or when we have to pay the bills. Joy, on the other hand, comes from a deep sense of rightness, goodness, of fruitfulness of what you do with your life, even in the most mundane everyday routine. Many of us are sitting and waiting for joy to happen and come into our lives, and that's not how we experience joy. Joy is not bestowed upon us. Joy is something we experience in three related ways. One way is when we take joy in the achievement or accomplishment of someone other than ourselves. And for a brief moment, we transcend our own personal desires and needs to celebrate someone who has met their own. This might be taking joy in watching a baby take their first steps, or a young couple embarking on their journey together, or college graduates as they complete their own college journey. The second way to experience joy is when we celebrate the achievement or accomplishment of our own. We experience joy when we set out to meet a goal or overcome a challenge, and sometimes that can be quite arduous or even painful. Ask any new mother after the birth of their child, but that mother quickly forgets about the pain and celebrates the joy of the child that has been brought into the world. And ask any mountain climber who's just reached the summit, who quickly forgets about the pain going up. The third way to experience joy is when we use our God-given talents that bring us that joy to help others. In another video, we learned that the greatest commandment is to love God with our head, heart, and hands. We also learned the second part of the greatest commandment is to love others as yourself. And we can do this by helping others. And by helping others, we experience joy in ourselves. We are called to do this, not out of obligation, but out of a desire. Another word for calling is vocation. And scholar Frederick Buechner said, vocation can be thought of as where our deepest joy meets the world's deepest needs. Paradoxically, our joy comes to us by virtue of caring, loving, and celebrating the well-being of another. That's why C.S. Lewis said joy is a byproduct. It comes about when we experience the pleasure and happiness of and with others. We can take joy in the simple act of sharing time with a friend. And let's take a moment to unpack why this simple act can be so joyful. It is the subconscious realization that another person is willing to shut out the rest of the world to commit a period of time for fellowship with you, just you. That's all it is. We take delight and joy in this special attention. The same thing happens when we sense God's loving presence as Jesus did. You are my beloved Son, in whom I am absolutely delighted. Now think of all the people in your life, a partner, children, friends, co-workers, even the checkout person at the supermarket. All could experience that sense of joy and delight when we take time to share a moment, good or bad, just with them. They sense this validation from you, and it makes their day. Sometimes we attempt to experience joy by accumulating things, hoping to fill an inner void. Instead, we simply fill our garage and lives with a bunch of stuff, and when the initial rush goes away, we seek our next fix. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with having things. After all, many things are useful and can make life easier, which in turn can make us happy. But that's not the same thing as experiencing joy. And when our own happiness becomes the focus of our lives, we cannot focus our attention on living a Christ-like life, and we certainly won't experience joy. George Bernard Shaw probably said this best. This is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, the being thoroughly worn out before you are thrown on the scrap heap, the being a force of nature instead of a feverish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. So, when was the last time you felt like jumping for joy? Remember, we experience joy by the rightness and goodness in how we live. By serving others, we serve ourselves, and that brings joy to them and to ourselves. Joy is a two-way street.